The whisper came so close to his ear that he felt the warmth of alien breath through the thin fabric of his hood. Mesd, Urea man. The words were barely audible, lost beneath the distant rumble of orbital bombardment and the constant hum of the city's failing shields. He didn't answer. In this part of the galaxy, being human was dangerous. Being male was worse. He kept his eyes down, hands folded like the others, pretending to be just another frightened refugee among hundreds of displaced women herded through the shattered corridors of the station. Fear was easy to fake. Silence was harder. Another explosion shook the floor, sending fragments of crystal lighting raining down. Panic rippled through the crowd, high-pitched alien voices crying out in unfamiliar tongues. In the chaos, a hand seized his wrist with surprising strength. Before he could react, he was pulled sideways through a narrow service hatch that slid shut behind them with a dull metallic thud. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the red emergency glow of a bunker corridor. The alien girl pressed a finger against her lips, her eyes wide, pupils dilated in a way that screamed both terror and resolve. They ran. The bunker doors sealed just as the screams outside were cut short. Inside, rows of alien women stared as the girl dragged him forward, her grip never loosening. He felt hundreds of gazes sweep over him, confusion turning to shock, then to something far more dangerous recognition. The girl stepped in front of him without hesitation, her body a shield. She spoke fast, urgently, her voice trembling but defiant. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was claiming responsibility, claiming him. The silence that followed was heavy. This bunker had been designed for one purpose: survival without men. 1,000 women from a species that had learned, painfully, that males attracted annihilation. Wars, predators, enslavers followed them like shadows. Men meant violence. Men meant extinction. And yet, standing there, the human felt something shift. He straightened slightly, instinctively, the way soldiers did when the worst became inevitable. The whisper had already changed everything. Alarms wailed overhead as external sensors screamed warnings. The enemy had found them. The women braced for the end they had always known would come. The human took a single step forward, meeting their eyes without apology. Fear flickered across alien faces. Then confusion. Then something unfamiliar. Hope, because somewhere in the shared myths of the galaxy, there was a story about humans, about what happened when they were cornered, about what they did when someone weaker stood in front of them and said, without words, "Please protect." The bunker was never meant to hold secrets like his. It was carved deep into the station's core, layered with shielding and silence, a sanctuary designed to hide a very specific truth. There were no men here. 1,000 women occupied the vast chamber, arranged in tight clusters, their bodies tense, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Every culture represented had agreed to the same rule, born from centuries of loss. Males drew attention. Attention brought extinction. Survival meant exclusion. He felt it the moment he stood among them. The air itself seemed to change, heavy with unspoken awareness. The alien girl who had pulled him inside hadn't let go yet. Her hand trembled against his sleeve, not from fear of him, but from fear for what he represented. She whispered again, softer this time, as if the walls themselves might be listening. The word for man, in her language, sounded like a warning and a prayer all at once. Eyes followed him wherever he shifted his weight. Some of the women recoiled. Others leaned forward, studying him with open disbelief. A few looked angry, not at him, but at the girl who had broken the oldest rule they had. He understood none of their languages, yet the tension needed no translation. He was an anomaly in a system built on careful balance, one mistake away from becoming a death sentence. Memories of Earth flickered through his mind training drills, evacuation protocols, the quiet understanding that humans were rarely welcome once the galaxy learned what they were capable of. He had survived by hiding, by softening his presence, by letting others underestimate him. But in this room, under the weight of 1,000 fearful stares, hiding felt impossible. His heartbeat sounded loud in his ears, steady and stubborn. The girl finally released his sleeve and stepped forward, her voice rising. The room erupted in overlapping arguments, alien tongues clashing like static. Some demanded he be expelled into the chaos outside. Others insisted it was already too late, that the bunker's signature would be compromised simply by his presence. A few, quieter than the rest, asked questions instead. How had he survived this long? What kind of species sent one male alone into a war zone? Then the floor trembled again. Not an explosion this time, but something heavier. Closer. The external sensors screamed louder, their alarms piercing even without translation. Whatever hunted them had found the bunker. Panic surged, drowning out debate. In that moment, the women realized something terrible and undeniable. The universe had already noticed them. The rule had failed. He stepped forward, hands open, unarmed. Fear tightened every face. But no one stopped him. He met their eyes one by one, not with dominance, but with certainty. If the end was coming, he would not cower. The alien girl watched him with something new in her expression. Not regret, not fear, hope. The realization spread through the bunker faster than panic ever could. Humans were not supposed to be here. Not in secret sanctuaries, not among protected populations, and certainly not in a place designed to remain invisible to the predators of the void. Every species in the room knew the stories. They whispered them to their young as warnings and omens. Where humans appeared, conflict followed. Fleets changed course. Empires paid attention. Survival statistics shifted violently. He felt the weight of that knowledge pressing in on him as the alarms continued to howl. The women stared, no longer just afraid, but calculating. A human presence meant variables they couldn't predict. It meant escalation. Somewhere beyond the bunker walls, something ancient and hungry was already adjusting its trajectory. Humans were loud to the universe in a way no other species could afford to be. He raised his head fully now, no longer hiding beneath the hood. The dim red lights reflected off his eyes, and several of the women flinched instinctively. They had learned, through bitter history, that humans did not look away when threatened. They stared back. Predators recognized predators. The irony was cruel. They had built this place to avoid exactly that attention, and now it stood in their midst. Breathing, waiting. The girl who had saved him spoke again, her voice steadier than before. She gestured toward the sealed doors, toward the vibrations creeping through the floor. Whatever was coming, didn't he care about their rules? Didn't he care about gender ratios or ancient agreements? It had found prey, and it was closing in. The argument in the room fractured, fear splintering into desperation. If humans were forbidden, they were also infamous for one thing the galaxy could never fully explain. They fought back. He took a slow step forward. No weapons, no armor, just a human in a room full of aliens who had spent generations avoiding beings like him. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, almost gentle, filtered through the station's crude translator. He didn't promise safety. He didn't claim victory. He simply stated a fact. If they were already seen, then hiding no longer mattered. Silence followed, deeper than before. Outside, something struck the bunker's outer shell. Testing it, the impact reverberated through every body in the room. A few of the women clutched one another. Others straightened, listening not just to the threat, but to the human. The truth settled in, uncomfortable but undeniable. The universe had noticed them long before this moment. Humans were not the cause. They were the consequence. As another impact thundered through the walls, the women understood something their ancestors never had the chance to learn. Humans didn't bring destruction because they wanted to. They brought it because when the darkness found them, they refused to kneel. Fear had always been the galaxy's first language, and the women of the bunker spoke it fluently. At first, it was etched into every rigid posture and widened eye as the humans stood among them. They had learned to fear his kind long before they ever met one. Human ships were overbuilt, their weapons inelegant but devastating, their soldiers relentless beyond reason. Civilizations didn't fear humans because they were cruel. They feared them because humans endured. The first breach attempt rattled the bunker, metal screaming under pressure. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Sharp and final, instinct took over. The women scrambled for cover, clutching one another, some crying out in languages the translator struggled to keep up with. The human didn't move. He watched the reinforced doors, counting the seconds between impacts, reading the rhythm of an enemy he couldn't yet see. That stillness unsettled them more than panic ever could. Another strike came, stronger this time. Warning glyphs flared across the walls, shifting from yellow to a violent red. The girl who had brought him inside stared at him, waiting, not ordering, not pleading, just watching, as if the answer to survival rested entirely on what he chose to do next. Slowly, others followed her gaze. Fear began to change shape. He finally moved, stepping toward the center of the chamber. His voice carried without effort, firm enough to cut through the alarms. He gave instructions, simple and precise. Where to stand, where not to stand, which bulkheads would fail first. He spoke as someone who had been in bunkers before, as someone who knew the sound of death knocking. Some hesitated, others obeyed instantly. Those who listened found themselves calmer, breathing in time with his words. When the outer shell ruptured, it wasn't chaos that followed. It was awe. The human was already there, braced against the decompression, using his own body to seal a breach long enough for emergency fields to stabilize. Pain flashed across his face, raw and unmistakable. But he didn't retreat. He roared something primal as the Station S systems responded, locking into place. The women watched, stunned. No species they knew would sacrifice itself so openly, so stubbornly. The next attack never came. Sensors lit up with new data, unfamiliar energy signatures blooming outside the bunker. The predator had hesitated. Something had changed. Fear rippled again through the room. But this time it wasn't theirs. It belonged to whatever lurked beyond the walls. Suddenly uncertain, suddenly aware it had found something that would fight back harder than expected. The women looked at the human differently now. Fear was still there, but it had been joined by something else. Respect. And beneath it, in that moment, legends were no longer abstract warnings. They were standing in front of them, breathing hard, bleeding slightly, and very much unbroken. Legends were never born in comfort. They emerged from moments where survival balanced on a razor's edge, where fear and choice collided, and something irreversible was decided. In the bunker, as emergency lights flickered, and the echo of distant threats faded into uneasy silence, the women understood that they had crossed such a moment. What stood among them was no longer just a human, nor merely a man in the wrong place. He had become a turning point. Word traveled quickly through the station's internal networks. Despite attempts to suppress it, a human had been seen. A human had held a breach. A human had not fled. For species that measured survival in probabilities and concealment, this was an alien concept in itself. Humans were supposed to be reckless, loud, destructive, yet what they had witnessed was resolve quiet, deliberate, and terrifyingly effective. The girl who had first pulled him into the bunker watched as the others slowly approached him. Some offered medical aid with trembling hands. Others simply stared, committing every detail to memory. In their cultures, history was not written lightly. It was etched into songs, warnings, and rituals meant to guide future generations away from extinction. Tonight, those traditions would change, not because they wanted them to, but because reality demanded it. Outside, sensors confirmed the impossible. The attacking force was retreating, not regrouping, not circling, leaving. Analysts would later struggle to explain it, running simulations that never quite worked. The truth was simpler and far more unsettling. The enemy had recognized a pattern. It had seen what happened when humans chose to stand their ground. In the calculus of survival, the cost had suddenly become too high. Inside the bunker, the women gathered, no longer divided by fear, but united by something fragile and new. They spoke of contingency plans, of alliances once thought unthinkable. The presence of a human had shattered an ancient rule, but it had also revealed its flaw. Hiding had kept them alive, but it had never made them safe. For the first time, they considered a future built on resistance rather than avoidance. The human listened, saying little. He knew this moment wasn't about him. Humans had never needed monuments or praise. Their legacy traveled ahead of them, carried by those who survived encounters with them. Still, when the girl met his eyes, he saw gratitude there, mixed with awe and a quiet understanding. She had not just saved his life. She had changed the trajectory of her people. When evacuation finally came and the bunker doors opened, the galaxy outside felt different. Not kinder, not safer, but altered. Stories would spread from this place, whispered at first, then spoken openly. Not all humans were monsters, not all were saviors. But when the darkness came, and when someone stood defenseless in front of them, humans would choose to become something worse than monsters to their enemies.